everyone. We're going to just give it a few more minutes. We still have a lot of people funneling in, so we're just going to give it a few more minutes to let everyone gather before we get started.
Smile.
Thank you.
All right, if I could have everyone's attention, we're going to get started. If everyone could kind of collect around the tent, we'll go ahead and start the festivities. All right, well, I would like to thank everyone for coming. My name is Lisa Tate, and I'm the Executive Director for the museum. And for almost 30 years, the National Museum of Forest Service History has been preserving the history of the United States Forest Service and of America's conservation legacy. And this is an immensely rich story. It's a large story to tell. And since the museum's founding, we have collected almost 50,000 artifacts that we maintain. And we share these artifacts with other museums. We share them with educators. We assist researchers and authors. So there's a lot of work that's been done by the museum that's done behind the scenes. We are currently raising money to build a world-class museum here in Missoula, Montana, to showcase this history. And we are very proud today to open our visitor center and interpretive trail to share some of this history with all of you, with the region, with Missoula, and with the United States. So we are a national museum, and even though we're located in Missoula, we have a very wide reach. This museum is a work in progress, and this interpretive trail that you're going to see today and the visitors cabin is just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot more planned, and we have a lot more coming up. So we hope that you will continue to come back and visit us, see what we have to offer, check out our webpage, and then also I would like to thank all of you for your support. A lot of people don't realize that the museum is a 100% nonprofit organization. We don't receive federal, state, governmental funding. We are funded by our members and donors. So thank you all so much. And this important work couldn't be done without you. We have a brief presentation this morning, and then we're going to be walking over to the interpretive trail and cutting the ribbon, and then we'll have some cake and refreshments, and we hope that you'll all enjoy the trail and ask a lot of questions and give us your feedback. So the first person that we have on the schedule today to speak about the museum is Dale Bosworth. And Dale is a second-generation forester. He was raised on a ranger station compound, multiple compounds, and he received his bachelor's degree in forestry from the University of Idaho and began working for the Forest Service on the St. Joe National Forest in Idaho. He's a retired chief of the United States Forest Service. After 41 years of service, he retired, and Dale sits on our board of directors here at the museum. I present Dale Bosworth.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm stepping on the cord. Well, thanks for coming. This is really good to see a good turnout here, and so I appreciate everybody doing this. I'm really glad that this is at 10 in the morning and say not 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Even though it's a little warm out there, it's nothing like it would be a little bit later. And it's really my pleasure to be speaking on behalf of the board of directors for the National Museum. Now, one of the things that people ask me every once in a while is, why Missoula? Why would you put the National Museum of Forest Service History in Missoula? And my response is, where's a better place? I can't think of a better place than this. There are a lot of there's a lot of potential other places. Portland does has a lot of forestry and history there, and Forest Service history. Denver, Colorado, Salt Lake City, but the thing that's different, in my view, about Missoula, or one thing that's different, is that the city of Missoula and the Forest Service grew up together. When you look at when the Forest Service was started in 1905, and the size of Missoula, and the interaction and almost interdependence between the U.S. Forest Service as a brand new agency and a fairly small town that was growing. That interaction has gone on for 112 years. And I think it's benefited both the city of Missoula, and I know it's benefited the U.S. Forest Service. So I think that's one reason in itself why this is the right place. I also think that when you live here in the Missoula area, it's really easy to take national forests for granted. I mean, you look around and they're everywhere. They provide so many things for the citizens of this part of the world, and also not just in western Montana, but people from all over the United States. And so, so you can start taking national forests for granted when you live in a place like this. Now, I'm hopeful that maybe the museum will remind us of this fantastic legacy that our forefathers established for us, and then maybe not have that tendency to take the lands for granted quite so much. So I think there's some real benefits to having the museum here. You know, the history of conservation and the Forest Service go hand in hand. The first chief of the Forest Service, Gifford Pinchot, is really considered the father of conservation. And his legacy, for me, is important from the Forest Service standpoint, but more important, his conservation legacy on not just national forest lands, but all lands across the United States, and actually lands in other places of the world. The thing that was bothering Gifford Pinchot when he really got started in forestry and conservation was that in the east they were cutting and running. They were cutting all the timber, and then they were leaving, and there were big floods that were taking place all over the Northeast particularly, and people figured out that we got to quit doing that. We have to start applying scientific principles, and so that's what he got started. And the other thing about Gifford Pinchot is his belief that all decisions should be made for the greatest good, for the greatest number of people, and for the long run. And that belief has stuck with both the Forest Service as an agency, but in the whole area of conservation for this past century, and still guides everybody. You know, in our history, that when the Forest Service really got started in 1905, it was pretty much of a custodial organization. Take care of the land. That's it. We just find out what land and where the boundaries of the national forest are, and start assigning rangers and doing some organizing. You know, and as we all know, in this part of the world, 1910 changed a lot of things when we had the big blow up of fires. 3 million acres and 87 people died. And that happened in western Montana, northern Idaho, and eastern Washington. And that really kind of changed the Forest Service to some degree. And of course, we started putting fires out more aggressively then. And now, to some degree, we're living with the consequences of that, with some of the fires we're having now. But we learn as we go. But that changed some of the things that was happening in the Forest Service. And then with the Great Depression, the Forest Service was instrumental in helping get the Civilian Conservation Corps going. And I think there was something like 3 million young men that were hired in the Civilian Conservation Corps. And the thing that's important about that, I think, is that these people were planting trees. They were doing all sorts of conservation work out on the ground. They were building trails. And these people, they left with this conservation ethic that lasted the rest of their life. And they also passed that on to their children, and they passed that on to other people, friends and relatives and neighbors. And so I think that had a huge influence on conservation, that part of our history. After World War II, or during World War II, a lot of the private lands were cut over to support the war effort. So after World War II, the Forest Service was asked to increase the amount of timber harvesting to pay for, to provide wood for the returning veterans. And so the Forest Service upped the timber harvest, which started the next sort of era, in my view, which was a timber era where we were harvesting a lot of timber. And that lasted for 20 or for about 30 years. And but in that time, in the 60s and 70s, the environmental movement got started. And of course, that changed the way that the Forest Service was thinking and the way that the rest of the public were thinking. To me, the 1990s were sort of a decade of change and transition. And I think that the 21st century so far, the real emphasis has been on restoration and outdoor recreation. And when I go back and think about when I first started the Forest Service, the number of people that recreated on the National Forest and compare with what's going on now, it's a huge difference. I mean, people are spending a lot of their time recreating on National Forest lands. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So anyway, that's sort of the way I see in a nutshell, trying to talk about the history of conservation of the Forest Service. You've got 5 minutes. It's my view of some of the history of conservation in the Forest Service. But I also want to mention the research branch of the organization, because that's been incredibly important to conservation, to the Forest Service's ability to manage national forests, and then also for private landowners and state forests and others, because of the tremendous amount of research that's been done over the last 100 years. And so that will hopefully continue to be a big benefit, not just in the United States, but around the world, because of the research, the world-class research that's done by the research branch. There's also a state and private forestry branch, which was originally set up almost 100 years ago to provide technical assistance to state foresters and some funding. Well, now all the state foresters have they all have good technical assistance. They don't need our technical assistance so much, but they still need the funding. And there's still an important partnership that the Forest Service has with them. There's also an international programs branch that most people don't know about. But Gifford Pinchot, in the early 1900s, really started international programs by going to the Philippines and helping establish the Bureau of Forestry in the Philippines and establishing the University, Forestry University there. Now the Forest Service works in 90 different countries around the world, developing countries. So it's grown quite a bit from the time that Gifford Pinchot started that. So just a couple last things I want to say. I feel like a lot of the West was built from the national forests. You know, when you think about the railroads and the amount of ties that had to be placed to build the railroads across the West, those came from the national forest by and large. When you think of so many of the small towns where the shops and the stores and the homes were built, they were pretty much came from the national forests. So much of the grazing that took place, you know, that helped people make a living and provided food for the country, were grazing on national forests and grasslands. So there's a lot of things that we've taken from our national forests over the past century, and that when you look at them today, they're in pretty darn good shape considering all that we've taken from these lands. My view is that maybe this museum might help us a little bit, or might inspire us a little bit in the public in general, to reinvest in these national forests and grasslands so that the next generations will have the same opportunities that we've had to take so many things and enjoy so many things in the national forest. So thank you again for coming. I am just tickled that there's so many people, and give your support to the museum the best you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker requires very little introduction. I think everyone can give a big round of applause for Mayor Engen. John Engen is a Missoula native, and he has served as the mayor of Missoula since 2006. Before serving as mayor, he also served on the Missoula City Council and was an award-winning writer and editor for the city's daily newspaper. Mayor Engen.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Oh, I'm excited to have a microphone that makes loud noises, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see all of you here this morning. Commissioner Strohmeyer and I were just commenting on the fact that we are pleasantly surprised at how many souls are here today to celebrate this trail and all that the Forest Service represents. A couple of quick notes. It is there are a limited number of days where you can wear shorts and flip-flops in Missoula, and so I took advantage of that. And besides that, Smokey is currently wearing my Wranglers, so it was a little embarrassing for him when he showed up this morning, so we tried to take care of that. I'll make my remarks mercifully brief and thank Chief Bosworth. Indeed, Missoula and the Forest Service are inextricable, and we are grateful for that relationship. And Missoula wouldn't be the place it is but for the concept, the ethic, and the practice of conservation. People live in Missoula because it is still a place, and it's a place because folks long before any of us showed up, well, not all of us looking around the crowd, but folks for decades now have practiced that conservation ethic and ensured that this place remains a place for generations to come. And the notion that we engage in public policy and practice for the greater good gets lost a little bit in the national rhetoric today. And so this is a refreshing moment underneath this tent in this beautiful setting to remind ourselves that we're all in this together and that to the degree that we can work together and we make a huge difference. We take care of each other, we take care of our places, and we take care of our children and their children and their children if we're doing this right. So I'm grateful for all of you for being here to celebrate, to acknowledge the great work of the Forest Service, to acknowledge the fact that working together we can make a difference. And my hunch is that this place will be a place for many generations to come because of the folks who came before us, the folks who are here today, and the folks who will come after us. So thank you very much. Wonderful to see you this morning. Let's celebrate.
Thank you very much. I did just want to also mention, for those of you that are unaware, that the museum is going to be here on this site. The main museum is scheduled to be built kind of right over past this lookout. So this will be the location. The next, I'm getting some. Oh yes, and I was also going to mention we have some additional seating up here if people would like to come up and have a seat. Our next speaker is Dave Strohmeyer, and Dave is the Missoula County Commissioner, and he has served in his current position since the beginning of this year. And he's also served as the community as a member of the Missoula City Council in the past. Dave holds 2 master's degrees, his second of which was in environmental studies, focusing on fire ecology right here at the University of Montana. And Dave has worked for the Bureau of Land Management as well as the U.S. Forest Service, primarily in firefighting, for 18 years. And more recently, Dave has worked with Historical Research Associates and 321 Innovations. Dave?
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Mayor Engen, Chief Bosworth, for your comments also. It is a great day to be here, and I think I'm preaching to the choir a little bit when I say this, but history matters. I used to work quite a bit at the National Archives in Washington, D.C., and as you enter the research wing of the building, there's an inscription that says, "What is past is prologue." If we're to understand the present and plan for the future, we have to understand our past, and the National Museum of Forest Service history is a part of that. The history of the U.S. Forest Service, again, it goes without saying, I think to this crowd, it matters. Both the physical places that embody that history and also the stories of the folks who contributed over the last greater than a century now to U.S. Forest Service history are stories that are important to all of us, to our national history, to our regional history. As Lisa mentioned, I used to work for the U.S. Forest Service, and in my years working out on the 9 Mile Ranger District, every day that I walked in the barn out there to sharpen a Pulaski or roll some hose was a tangible and visceral reminder of not only the task and the mission that I had before me on that day, but the many generations of folks to whom I was connected who worked over there at that ranger district, that ranger station over the decades. That's important. Every time that I hear I hope I'm not offending any folks from the media today, but someone doing a news report or someone in the general public who refers to the U.S. Forest Service as the Forestry Service, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. And yes, you can clap, that's fine. And that's a reminder to me why the National Museum of Forest Service history is important to continue to tell the story of this agency and what it really is and what it really means. Dale already did, I think, a great synopsis of the long trajectory of history of the U.S. Forest Service, so I'm not going to recap all of that, but a couple of things I will say, and they speak to why Missoula, Montana, and the Northern Rockies are important as the location and home for this museum. Here in the Northern Rockies, and again, as Dale mentioned, the 1910 fires, the great fires of 1910 that swept across 3 million acres of the Northern Rockies really were the crucible for and the creation story for fire management in the U.S. Forest Service, which rippled across to other agencies and entities within the United States. That's an important story to tell, and that's a reason why this is a fitting location for this museum. The Northern Rockies, Region 1, the northern region of the U.S. Forest Service, straddles the Continental Divide and is the headwaters for the great watersheds of the Columbia and Missouri for this North American continent. The U.S. Forest Service and National Forest lands are really the place where the headwaters can be protected. It's a fitting place for this museum to be here. On February 1st, 1905, the same day that the Transfer Act was signed into law by President Theodore Roosevelt, the then Secretary of Agriculture wrote a letter to Gifford Pinchot, the newly minted chief of the U.S. Forest Service, and he wrote, "In the administration of the forest reserves, it must be clearly borne in mind that all land is to be devoted to its most productive use for the permanent good of the whole people, and not for the temporary benefit of individuals or companies." That's a story worth telling, and that's a story that I am confident the National Museum of Forest Service history will tell in the decades to come. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And to learn more about that story, you can start with the founder's signage along our interpretive trail. Our next speaker is Danielle Tribble, and she is the field representative for Senator Steve Daines' office, and she has a message from the senator who was unable to join us today.
Hi everyone, I have a letter from the senator that I would like to read. Dear friends, welcome to the opening ceremony for the National Museum of Forest Service History. Thank you for kindly inviting me to join you today and allowing me to share a few words. I'm currently back in Washington, D.C. working for you, but I wanted to express my excitement and appreciation for the National Museum of Forest Service History and for those who have worked so diligently to make this museum possible. Since 1988, the National Museum of Forest Service History has remained dedicated to creating a museum that fulfills its mission of national conservation education, historical preservation, and remembrance of the significant deeds and people associated with the Forest Service. With over 50,000 artifacts, an interpretive forest discovery trail, and interactive traveling exhibits, the museum not only serves as a place of enjoyment, but also as an educational facility, teaching visitors about the history and significance of our nation's forests. As the only museum in the nation dedicated to forest conservation, the National Museum of Forest Service History serves as a huge asset to the Missoula community. As the chairman of the Agriculture Subcommittee on Forestry, I will continue my work to protect Montana's wood products workforce, improve the health of our national forests, and create stronger forested communities. Again, thank you for inviting me to celebrate with you today. It is an honor to serve Montanans in Washington, D.C., and if I can ever be of assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Steve Daines, United States Senator.
Thank you very much for coming. We just have a couple more speakers, and then we'll be cutting the ribbon and having cake and refreshments. Our next speaker is David Schmidt. David is the Deputy Regional Forester and has been with the Forest Service since 1980. And prior to coming to the Northern Region, David worked for the Forest Service's Southern Region in Atlanta, where he served as the Director of Biological and Physical Resources. And he started with the agency in the Alaskan region as Fisheries and Watershed Program Leader, and later on the Tongass National Forest as District Ranger. He has also worked as the District Ranger for the Beartooth Ranger District in the Custer National Forest, and he has served as the National Fisheries Program Leader in the agency's Washington, D.C. office. So, David, thank you very much for joining us today.
Excuse me. Thank you. My remarks will be shorter than the introduction. I know it's very hot out there. When I start thinking back, my first experience, how many have wore that smoky costume before? So some of you can relate. Second summer with the Forest Service in Minnesota, July 4th parade. downtown, and I got to wear that, and it took a long time to get back into it after that, so you can appreciate that. And I know folks are just cooking out there, so real briefly, just really what a pleasure it is to be here today. A little bit humbling for me to follow folks like Chief Bosworth and Mary Egan and others that have been up here, but what a great day. What a day to celebrate all of the work that's been going on between folks, retirees, and staff and volunteers to get to the point where we are here. And so just congratulations to all of you that have worked on this. The Forest Service here in the region, a great partnership we've been working on in Conservation Ed, and I encourage you all to spend a little bit of time, certainly after here, touring the grounds. And so just really on behalf of the northern region here, and Leanne Martin and myself, our regional forester, want to thank you for coming out today. What a great turnout and what a great day to celebrate all the work that's happened to date, and looking forward to everything that's coming into the future. So outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have one more speaker, but before we get to Claudia Brown, is Tate Jones in the audience? Tate has a presentation for the museum, and we'll go ahead and have Tate make that. Right here.
Oh, pleasure to see Smokey and Woodsy here today, but no Johnny Horizon? Don't worry, 1970s nostalgia will soon crash upon us like a retardant drop. It's a pleasure here to continue Fort Missoula's relationship with the U.S. Forest Service. Today, Fort Missoula had one of the first timber reserves in the state in 1877. Fort Missoula troops escorted Gifford Pinchot into the Selway Bitterroot in the 1890s, and of course the 4th Infantry took under its wing one of the largest CCC districts in the nation, over 40,000 corpsmen in the 1930s. And so, in that vein, it's a pleasure to present from the Rocky Mountain Museum of Military History today a certificate of commendation to the U.S. Forest Service Museum. We have a small poster of a World War II Prevent Forest Fires tag up here. And certainly this will maybe one of the first accolades in your wall. It certainly will not be the last. There will be many, many more to come. And thank you all who have put their effort and money into building this very special place, which will be a place of enjoyment for Missoulians and visitors to come visit for many, many generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I won't keep you much longer, but I was just informed that we also have a representative from Senator Tester's office who will be reading a letter from Senator Tester, and I apologize for it.
Thank you, Lisa. My name's Deborah France, and I'm the Regional Director for Senator Tester here in Missoula. And Senator Tester asked me to bring this message. Thank you for inviting me to the exciting grand opening of the National Museum of Forest Service History, and I'm sorry I can't be with you here today. I want to especially thank all the volunteers who've worked so hard for so long to make this museum possible. There's no better place for the Forest Service History Museum than right here in Missoula. The impact of the Forest Service can be felt across western Montana, and many families call Missoula home today because of their role with the Forest Service. This museum tells the stories of the folks who battled blazing wildfires, managed our unique wildlife, and helped protect and manage millions of acres of public land. As Montana's outdoor economy continues to grow, it's critical that folks understand the hard work that went into preserving our rivers, streams, and trails that we all enjoy today. I'm thrilled to see this project come to fruition, and I cannot wait to step foot in this museum someday soon. Thank you again for your great work, and please stay in touch. Sincerely, Senator Jon Tester. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. And our final speaker today will be Claudia Brown. And I wanted Claudia to just say a few words to speak about her husband and his involvement and passion for the National Museum of Forest Service History. Gary Brown was one of the founders of the museum, and his dedication and passion is what put us here today. He worked in state forestry here in Montana for over 31 years, and he received numerous honors and awards throughout his career. I never had the pleasure of meeting Gary as he passed away in 2010. However, I have gotten to know Gary a bit through Claudia, and he seems like an amazing individual. Claudia? Gary would be so proud to see all these people here. He would be thrilled. Gary worked on the museum during his retirement, even before his retirement. And he also worked on climate change, because that's a challenge that faces all of us. So he had a long-term vision. He saw how the National Museum of Forest Service History could help people understand not just Forest Service history, but also how history sheds light on the issues and challenges that the land and the forests and the Forest Service face today. This beautiful place and the open-style museum that will be built here will extend the richness of experience that the Missoula area offers to its residents and visitors. This museum will enrich that ongoing discussion of those issues and challenges that face all of us. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'd like to invite you all to join us right at the opening of the trail. We'll be cutting the ribbon and taking some photos. Please all come and join us, and then we can have cake and enjoy the Trail and Visitor Center. And thank you all so much for coming. Okay, ready? Set? Go! Enjoy the trail. Give us your feedback and have cake and refreshments, please.
Cake and coffee at the porch.
And then they just go in a big train.
Try to get the same way.
Right, on each side. See? And then they
And
put
I know
it
what
on
this is for.
Oh. And then they put it on the horse or the mule, and see, then they line them up.
Tie your horses up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was good. Nice to have the paper.
I read that one.